All right, so goal here is we want to make a Vue app that has multiple pages on it, and we want to hook it up to an API. So let's take a look at how we would do that. Let's start all together with Vue create, just like we did yesterday. Give it any name you want. Call mine Borkwire. And I am going to select router, Vuex, CSS preprocessors. History mode, yep. There we go. All right, we head into our folder. npm run serve. And then, just like yesterday, I always like to start by just kind of cleaning out the boilerplate. So I'm going to get rid of the assets, stuff in the assets folder. I'm going to get rid of that component. I'm going to get rid of my views. I'm going to delete everything in the app component except that div wrapper. Get rid of all those styles. And then last thing, over in router, I'm going to get rid of that and everything in the routes thing. So it should look like that. If I do all that, I should have a whole whopping lot of nothing showing up on the page. Oops, someone's mad at me. npm run serve. Cool, I got nothing showing up on the page. And then if I look at that app.vue file and just put anything in here, make sure that we actually got everything working correctly. Show me the Borkwire. Oh, that's exactly why we do this. Why? npm run serve is the command. You want nothing in your assets folder, nothing in your components folder, nothing in your views folder. App.vue gets mega trimmed down, and router loses that about import and everything inside that routes array. Still should be seeing something there though. Nope, nothing in there. Interesting. Okay. npm run serve. While there we go. All right. Cool. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. All right, what you need, Parker?
I've got to delete some. So in this one,
Everything except, so we're going to keep the app div, get rid of everything between those and now. because we still need to keep the closing div. Yep, everything in between there.
Router view.
Yep.
Cool.
And then all those styles. Yep. Nice. Now you're green. How you doing, Josh? Scroll up. Okay, so you want to get rid of everything in between those, but otherwise, nope. Keep those divs with the image and the hello world. I want to get rid of those. Yeah, just something to make sure that we're not smoking balloon juice. Good. And then beautiful. Go back to your. Let me see what's happening in your router. Did you delete the folder? Okay, I missed this in folders. So we want to delete this up in the folders. We want to delete the folders themselves. So, do you have yours from yesterday? Were you on the lesson yesterday?
Yeah.
Cool.
I do.
If you want to just hop over to the one you were using yesterday, it starts the same way.
You
Yep.
can check real quick.
Yeah.
Assets, empty.
Yep.
Empty.
Good.
Empty.
Good.
Use just a template.
Yep.
Style.
Yep.
Div
Get rid of your
style.
router.
Even better.
Oh.
Deleted all those files.
Cleared out
Yep.
routes.
Where's that home import? Good. Very nice.
Mistakes.
Yep. All that stuff. Cool. So you should have it showing up on the browser now.
Locals.
Yep. 88 is the default. Whatever your
Yeah, run that npm. npm runs.
Okay. So go back over to your app template. Yep. And then write anything in here. Actually, get rid of this nav also. Want just the just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, sweet. So you just have like page one.
What was it, sorry?
Cool. There we go. We're in business.
Yeah.
Samantha, you got it?
Yep, I'm good.
Excellent.
I started editing.
All right. So first thing we're gonna do is make these routes. So here's how we do that. The general pattern for this is that there's only components in Vue. That's it. We're going to make a difference between two different types of components, though: views and components. A view is something that you route to. A view is something you route to. A view is something you route to. That's it. It's the only difference. Otherwise, it's literally the exact same thing. But we're going to put them in different folders. So if you're routing to something, it's a view. So we're going to do sign up and about, and we'll have one called index. So I'm going to touch source, views, index.view. I'm using a capital I. You don't have to, but that's a pretty popular convention. And I'm going to make about.view, and I'm going to make signup.view. Three folders, or three files in that views folder. And then if I open that, I can just copy what I have in my app template right now. If I go to that index.view that I just made, copy that in. I'm going to make this an H2 that says dogs. I'm going to, I'm going to go to my about page, copy all that in, just make it say about. Then I'm going to go to that sign up page and make a heading that says sign up. Otherwise, empty components. But it'll let us know that our routing is set up correctly. Cool. Questions about what I just did there? 3 mega bare bones components. I'm keeping them in the views folder because I want to route to them. And then next thing, in this app.view, I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to make a navigation that has an unordered list with LIs in it, each one of which contains a router -link. And you close it. You can do it with dashes, or you can do it with capital R, capital L. Vue's flexible enough that it does not care. It knows what you're talking about. Either way is fine. So we'll say router link, and then we'll call this one home. And router link, which, as you might guess from its usage here, is also a component. It's built into Vue Router. Is going to take a prop called to. So we're going to bind with the colon in front to. And once we do the colon in front, everything we do inside of here is JavaScript. So what we want to pass to it is an object. And in that object, we want to give it name, index. Yours should look like this. It's an object with a key of name, the value of the string index. Note that you'll probably have to use double quotes here, single quotes there. Cool. I want 2 more of those. I'm going to change this to sign-up and a boot. So I should have a list with 3 router links. Next thing, below that nav, I am going to use a router view. It's a self-closing tag. And how this is going to work is we click on these, it takes us to a route. The thing that we route to shows up inside router view. It just swaps it. Swaps out router view for whatever the component we're routing to is. Super simple. Now to wire this up, to get these 3 routes, we're going to go into the router. And in this routes array, we're going to put an object. Vue routes have 3 properties to them. First one's the name. Call this one index. Second thing is the path. That's what we want the URL to be. And the last thing is the component that should render there. So we'll say index with a capital I, and then we need to import that in. So up here we'll say import index from @/views index. And then we're going to do the same thing with sign up and about. Order doesn't matter. We'll call that one sign up, and the URL should be /sign up, and the component should be sign up. And then we want to do that with about also. Sign up, about, sign up, about. All right, if we did all that right, we should be able to navigate this site now. So sure enough, I'm on the home page. I see dogs. Click that, goes to sign up, about, sign up, dogs. So if you did this right, you should be able to do the same thing. Let's give everybody a second to get caught up. Ask me if you need me to put anything on the screen.
It's supposed to show what you click on.
Yep. It's not the actual problem though. Let me see your app.vue file. Okay, good. Sure, so you're about. And then let me see your router. That's the first one. Yep.
Why isn't it calling her?
Scroll it. No, it's because it's in a router folder. Okay. Up. Okay, that's right. Those are in the Vue Zoom folder. Let me see your app.vue. You have a space after the. Nope, no spaces.
The spaces.
So between the yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. Jesus. Have a router view. Oh, fine. Gotcha. Back over your router.
No, it's the path. It's
Oh, yep. Don't do /index. So you want it to be just slash.
Oh, that one's just.
Yep. There we go. All right, Josh, how you doing? Okay. Okay, good. So let's go to the actual components. Yeah, you just have to change the thing in here. So make that an H2 that says about. Dogs, is what I said. Good. And then your setup. Setup. Okay. Now if you go back over to the browser. What's going on? Let me see your app component. Well, below this nav, we need to add a router view. I think of that as like a hole that you punch through the component and then show whatever you route it to. So below the nav, we're going to say router-view, VIE. Yep, and then self-close it.
go to sign up one and get rid of the header part of this. Yeah, all of those.
Hey, now we got something going on. All right, so Matthew, you got it? Doing good? All right, so that's routing. The one thing we didn't talk about is we call dynamic routing, or routing with partials, or nested routing, all the same thing. But this is where we have some dynamic segment on this, where like maybe we have like a profile page for individual dogs. That's something like dog, and maybe there's a dog component that just shows one, and we'll do /dogs ID. And what you'll be able to do is you can route to something like this, and if you go to dogs/5, when you get to that dog component, there's a special object called route params that has that 5 in it. And so you can either look that up in state or make a fetch request or do whatever you need to do. But elsewise, that's probably all you need to know about routing for right now. Cool, questions?
You mentioned the document, but can you go over the router link and router viewer here?
Yeah, so all a router link does is generate an anchor tag. So if we element inspect this, hey, what do you know? It's just an anchor. And it's got all this other like view magic on it, and it has an event attached to it and whatever else. Does all the magic that it needs to be viewy, but it generates it for us at build time based on whatever all this stuff is. Because remember, they're not actual links. They're not actually going anywhere. Single page app, so we never actually leave the page, but we can fake that out with these router links. Cool. And then the other thing is this router view. So what router view does, imagine that this component gets a hole punched in it, and we just take a look at whatever component we routed to through that hole. So I think of it kind of like, if I have this page that kind of looks like this, and I say Barkwire, that's my app. And then inside of that, I've got these links up here. And then this is the router view. And this just gets filled in with whatever the component we routed to was. And what's powerful about that is it gets filled in, because so we can render a component in there which can also have its own router views. So we can just have holes punched through holes, punched through holes. But, and this is like the easiest thing I think in any component architecture to like get wrong. This has nothing to do with the logic structure of like your models, your data, anything like that. It's exclusively the visual appearance of this. Nested view, nested route. But like, we might have something, this is a super common example. I have a list of things of dogs over on the side, and when I click on one, this list stays here, and the currently selected thing shows up in there. So I click on this one, this goes here. Click on this, it goes here. But this list stays here the whole time. That's called master detail. That's not the only way that I could do that, though. I could also have something where I have this, and the entire thing gets replaced. I don't have the whole list anymore. The data model didn't change, just my presentation of it. So if this is nested like it is here, then your routes are nested. Otherwise, they're not. Cool. Other questions about routing?
Just kind of, when I was looking at the docs, I know you can also do queries.
Mm-hmm.
So like we were in, I'm forgetting which mod, but we were doing like query strings.
Yeah.
And then you're supposed to be able to like append them too. How exactly do you do that?
So I'm imagining you do it through the route. Let's see. If I look up Vue Router route route object, I'll bet there's like a params or something. Let's see. Two.
Where's the append underneath it?
So yeah, we have that append. So what that's for is like if I'm let's say I route 2 dogs, not to name dogs, but just the actual string. So if I wanted to do that, it would look something like this. I take the colon off. I just do that. That's just going to go to /dogs. If I did that, it would take whatever URL I'm currently on and add /dogs to it and take me there.
Okay.
Is how I'm reading those docs. Cool. So the route object. There we go. Query. There we go. And it's an object. That makes sense. So what I would do here is I want to go to this and I want to add a query that's something like dog ID 1. So now if I go to that sign up link, dog ID 1. Other questions about routing? Yeah.
Is there anything special about that nav tag? I just never used one.
So it's a semantic tag.
Okay.
Like all HTML tags, it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
But it semantically indicates that these are for primary navigation on the site.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions about routing? Cool. Let's get a list of dogs to show up on that index. So what we're going to do, think about how I want to do this. We're going to add a script tag. And we're going to export default an object. And then we're going to make a computed property called dogs. And let's start by just hard coding it. So we can hit that URL that we did earlier. Barkwire API January /dogs. Just copy all that. Oh, it kept the JSON. Lame. Shoot. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I'll take all the JSON, and it's gonna we'll do return JSON.parse and that whole thing. Oh no, it is JavaScript. Never mind. Doesn't need to be JSON parsed. Just the array. And let's take that dogs key off. So you'll know you did this right if it starts and ends with a square bracket. Like that. All right, so I have this dogs computer property. Now I want to show all those dogs on the page. So I'll say UL I'm going to make an LI, and this is going to be a v4. We're going to iterate over it. For dog in dogs, the key is, sorry, the key has to start with a semicolon since we want to JavaScript it. It's dog.id. And for each one of these, we want dog.name and a dog.description. And what the hey. Let's throw the image in there also. So we're gonna bind the source attribute on this. I'm gonna start that with a colon so I can use JavaScript and say dog dot, what's it called? Image underscore URL. Cool. So on that index page, I should have a list of dogs now. Go over here. Hey. Cool. Got a bunch of buddies. So we're red-green refactoring, kinda. We had nothing. Now we have something. Now all we have to do is keep this working as we make that data more and more dynamic. So first thing I'm going to do, and I actually do this when I'm building these things out, by the way, is I'll take that return, that little thing that came back. I'm just going to put it outside the component. Const dogs equals that. And now I'm just returning dogs, like that. Cool, does it still work? Still works. The next step is I want to get this into state. So the way that I'm going to do that is we're going to go into the store. So this is source store index.js. And I have this empty object here called state. I am going to, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this dogs thing over here out of the component and just put it somewhere at the top of this state file. And then over here, I just say dogs, which as a reminder is equivalent to dogs is dogs. But we'll just say dogs. So now I'm keeping track of dogs in state in the application. So since this index doesn't have this anymore, we have to pull this out of state. So to do that, we return this $store.state.dogs. Things that start with a $ in Vue are special magic Vue things. Every component has access to the store, and you get to it through this $store. And then once you get there, it's just this fucking object. So if I did that right, this should still work. And there we go. Cool, so now I'm reading it out of store. This component doesn't know whether this came from an API or I hard-coded or whatever. So that takes a whole range of troubleshooting things kind of off the table. All right, but I do want to make it dynamic. So I need to fetch something from that API, right? So the way that Vuex works, a view can dispatch an action commits a mutation, and a mutation changes state. Boop, boop, boop.
What's module one?
This is if you want to, once this file starts getting big, you can make it into substores.
Oh, okay.
You dispatch an action, commit a mutation, which sets states. So, this is technically possible, and you'll see it out in the wild, don't do it. A Vue can commit a mutation, don't do that. Your Vue should dispatch an action, which can be synchronous, asynchronous, whatever. This commits a mutation, has to be synchronous, and this can change state. Pori Hemplo. In this action, I'm going to make an action called fetch dogs. And the only thing this is going to take in, we're going to destructure the word commit out of it. That looks like goofy, wild-ass syntax. Fetch dogs is automatically going to get passed an object, and we want the commit thing out of it, so we're just destructuring it out. Then we're going to fetch to our URL, which was this API URL. So we fetch the URL, and then we parse the response.
Isn't it already parsed?
Nope. Because we're using fetch.
Oh, yes.
Fetch goes and grabs it. Got to parse it as JSON, parse the JSON into an object. And then we're going to take that response that we get back, the parsed response, and we're going to commit a mutation with the thing that we get back. So I'm going to commit set dogs to response.dogs. I destructured this magic built-in Vuex thing called commit. I fetched to an API, I parsed the response, and I'm committing the set dogs mutation, which I haven't written yet, and sending it this. All right, so now I need a mutation called set dogs. First thing that every mutation gets is whatever the current state is. And the second thing it gets is whatever you passed it. So dogs. So what I want to do is set state.dogs equal to dogs. And then return state. Neat. Now, if I did all this right, I don't need that hard-coded one at all. I can set this to an empty array to start with. We should be reading from an API. Uh-oh, something I didn't like. Oh, I need to actually dispatch the action. So, back over here, for those of you who've done React, it's this is a lifecycle hook. So I'll say, whenever this is created, I want you to this $store.dispatch fetch dogs. Hey, look. It's all my buds.
Question.
Yep.
When do you want to use created and when do you want to use mounted?
It's less important with Vue than it is with
React.
React. I always kind of default to created on this because it happens sooner than mounted does. Unless you're like depending on something being in the DOM before you trigger something, I don't think it matters that much.
Okay.
But yeah, like mounted would also work. If I change that to mounted, still works. Cool, now we're doing state management. We pulled out the state from the store. Whenever this component gets mounted or created or whatever, we tell the store to fetch the dogs. Powerful idea there. This component doesn't know how to do that. Doesn't care. Could be hard-coded, could come from an API. That fetch, what the URL is, none of that shit is this component's business. Just says, hey, just letting you know, you should go get the dogs. Really common mistake with this, same one as in React. So if this is dogs, and it's set to whatever state.dogs is, and I'm looping through it here, this always needs to be loopable. So an empty array, totally loopable. If it's nothing, nothing isn't loopable, so it breaks the app. Over here, fetch dogs, we fetch the dogs, we commit the mutation with the result. This mutation, set the dogs equal to what we got passed in, update the state. That is routing and state management in a nutshell in Vue. What questions have you?
On set dogs,
Mm-hmm.
it's getting the state and it's getting dogs.
Yep.
Well, it's getting state.dogs, which is different than the dogs it was passed, correct?
So when I call this mutation, I passed it this.
Yep.
I also have access to whatever state currently is. So right now, state is an object with a dog's property that has an empty array in it.
Okay.
I'm overwriting that to be this.
Okay.
I could have also done, if I just want to like append the dogs, I could do something like spread state.dogs and then add dogs to the end. That's fair.
Okay.
Here I'm just outright replacing it. And then what I return back from this is what state becomes. Pretty cool. What else?
I got a question.
Mhm.
On your views, you used computed.
Yep.
When do you use computed and when do you use data? Like, what's the
Sure.
difference between the two?
Great question. So, what Sam's talking about, if I have a local state, I do something like that. The rule of thumb on this is computed properties are derived from other things. In this case, this is what's called an alias. Something else owns the dogs. I want to use the dogs though. My template up here can't or shouldn't see the store. It shouldn't have any idea where the data comes from. But it can see every computed property. So this is how I'm just making somebody else's shit available to this template. The reason I don't want to put that in data, and I probably could, if I did, come on now. So I'll bet this all still works. Maybe? I'd kind of expect that to work, but whatever. So The reason you don't want to do that is that data is for things that this component is going to change, that don't need to go anywhere else. So like common example would be something like, stop it. If I had a button on here, I set a click handler for show dogs, I might have like dogs are showing that starts false, and then I have a method called show dogs that sets this dot dogs are showing to true. And then over here, this whole thing becomes a VIF for like dogs are showing. Perfect. All right, so now I have this button, there's nothing there. Now they show up.
And you just did this dogs are showing the true change it?
Yep. Because I want this component to be able to change this, that's what makes it local state for this component. The rest of the application does not give a shit whether or not dogs are currently showing in this component. It's local. So like it's kind of a last resort thing. And I think one of the worst patterns that React has started encouraging is people have a hard time figuring out which goes where, and so they just throw everything into like the app container store. Bad, lazy, doesn't solve the actual problem. Computed properties are derived from other things. And like I can't set this. This component can't set dogs to be something else. It's just a function. Every time I call it, I get this back. This, I can change that whenever I want. I have a computer property that can change it. I have methods that change it. I can do whatever. But no other component knows about this state. More questions about state management?
I just had a simple question
Mhm.
for the index.vue file.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it double curly braces just its indexing?
Oh, yeah.
So that's if you want to show either a computed property or local state. You double curly that, and now you can swap that out for whatever the value that is.
What's the first one red and the second one black?
This is my syntax highlighters
Okay.
being fucky. What else?
Images on my localhost 88 are showing up. Do you know what might be breaking that?
Did you put the colon in front of source?
I did not.
Damn, that fixed mine.
So the reason why is if I leave it off, it's just like I typed that in HTML.
Sure.
I said the URL of this is dog.image URL. If I do that, it goes, JavaScript. I'll try to figure out what you mean. Now, the fucking annoying thing, this is what I mean by like ships up with all the foot guns, is since that's just JavaScript, I can do anything I want with this, including like, all right, if that's blank, I want to fall back to this like placeholder image or whatever. But as soon as you start doing that, all right, cool. Now there's logic here and logic in the logic place. It's just, that gets out of control really quickly. So that when something, you will need to change something, or you need to figure out where something's broken, now there's two places you need to look for that. Annoying. Cool, what else?
Do you think there's a reason why, I think Carl too, but I noticed Parker and I don't have any, ours doesn't light up like yours, it's just one color.
Yeah, you gotta install a syntax highlighter. I think Sam knows the one that you're supposed to use.
No, I don't,
Oh.
but, you know, like, I know what you're talking about, cause it's on mine too.
You guys are VS Code? I think the first time you open a .vue file, it prompts you to like install a plugin or
I
something.
think it probably asked, but yeah,
It
they
just
suggest
has
me all kinds of
Future or something?
Yeah, Vuture, something like that. If you just look it up, syntax highlighting for VS Code,
Okay.
it's like 3 clicks.
It's also
You-
really bad at autocomplete, so I was typing on all my tags
Mhm.
manually, it's slow down my life.
Yeah, it's because it has no clue what a .vue file is.
Yeah.
That's not like in its database or something.
I need to
So,
find something for that.
and it's one file that has a very HTML-like thing and a JavaScript and Sass in it. How's it supposed to know?
You also might wanna download the Vue Dev Tools, those will help.
Indeed. So Vue Dev Tools, once you install those, do I not have them on here? Oh, that's jank. All right. Or Firefox. So if you look up Vue Dev Tools, add to Firefox. Yes, please. And now when I refresh this, take a look at what happens to my debugger. Oop. What in the fuck? I want you to give it to me. I should have another tab here.
Is it looks like it's at the top. I see the Vue button.
Oh, I think I need to, there we go. Open and close that. So if I go over here, couple cool things about this. For one, it'll give me my component hierarchy. So that's pretty slick. Also, a couple other things. I can see my current state. Not only that, I can see the history of state changes in there. Super helpful for debugging. Every event that's fired, I can take a look at my routing history. So as I like click around here, it shows all the different routes that I went to. There's some like perf management stuff. Super handy. Cool. What else?
What's the tag on the UL?
Oh, I did this for this like local state thing. It's not necessary.
What are all the V's? It's like V4, V.
So these are just HTML elements. So we need to make sure that we're not colliding with like either stuff that's currently HTML attributes or stuff that might be in the future. Dashes are banned from regular HTML attributes. So if we do v dash, we can do whatever the fuck we want. But like for example, is already like a valid HTML attribute. So if we do v4, that's letting you know that it's called namespacing. You go, all right, anything that starts with v dash, whatever plugins you're using, whatever stuff might change in browsers in the future, that's just our space. Yeah, v4, vif, and every time we do this like colon thing, you'll notice this if you go through like the tutorials from the docs. That's just a shorthand for v-bind colon key. If you just leave that off, it does the same thing. Ditto for, I had that button a second ago. @click is short for v-on colon click. And you can abbreviate that to @click. Kind of cool. Awesome. Anything else you want to know?
The MVC framework,
Mm-hmm.
this is entirely Vue, or how is it sliding into that?
Like the the MVC metaphor starts breaking down really fucking clearly. So it's like, MVC is from like the mid-80s. And it has been twisted about as far as I think it can possibly go. The core Vue library is just the V, but this is very much an M, and there are no controllers. So closest would be MVVM, which is model view view model, which is like typically how you describe binding things like this. Even that I don't think is particularly good. So I gave a talk once upon a time about how I think about this in Vue. It was called App Architecture with Vue. And let's see. I call this pattern model view component. So request comes into a router, router figures out which view it needs to go to. Vue's job is to figure out which component hierarchy it needs to render and mitigate all of the like relationships with the store. Components don't access the store directly, or at least they shouldn't. Vue does all the interaction with the store, any changes, any action dispatches, all those happen between these two things. So they do that and then figure out what components to render, and otherwise you try to keep the views kind of stupid. The one exception for this is what we call application-wide state. That stuff goes in services, and any component in the hierarchy can access those. So once the store is really just keeping track of like what the current state is. I had another abstraction on top of that that works a lot like Active Record does in Rails. But you say, I would like to have a dog model. And if I do dog.fetchAll, I don't need to write that separately for dogs or cats or users or whatever. If it follows a conventional pattern, it knows how to construct the URL and knows whether or not it's already been loaded, like a lot of that kind of shit. And so this pattern altogether I call model view component. And it works in React also. And I think it's like the only sane way to manage these kinds of things. Most like developers disagree with me, and they end up reinventing this shit differently at every single company, and it's always just footgun madness. Because it works really well and the app is small, and as it grows up, and they don't want to do something like this, because look at all the boxes, look at all the arrows. But the thing is, this same pattern would work for like Facebook, for fucking anything. Anything that follows any kind of conventional format, you could model this way. And you go, well, our app isn't that complicated. Yet. The second it does, now you need to like figure out how to not only solve that problem, but get it to work with the like hodgepodge you already put together. It's my beef with like unopinionated frameworks. They leave the hard parts to you. Cool. Any other questions? All right, sending out a survey.
I think there's one out.
Oh, there is?
I'm looking at it.
Ugh.
Looking at it. Yes, there's one out.
Gosh darn it. All right.
Yes, you will.
All students are, all.